Meg Cabot, When Lightning Strikes, Chapter 14. Crane Military Base, located about an hour's drive from my hometown, had been one of the many Army bases closed by the government during the 80s. At least it was supposed to have closed, but somehow it never did. At least not all the way, in spite of all those stories in my hometown paper about all the locals who worked there as maintenance men and cooks who ended up losing their jobs. The military jets, the ones that were constantly breaking the sound barrier, never quite disappeared, and we still had uniformed soldiers showing up for lunch and dinner at all three of my dad's restaurants long after the base was said to have been shut down. Douglas, when he was at his most paranoid, had insisted that Crane was like Area 51, a place where the Army swears there's no base, but over which people always see these flashing lights late at night. But when I arrived at Crane, it certainly didn't look as if anyone was trying to keep the fact that it was still open a secret, and it didn't look as if it had been neglected either. The place was pretty clean. The lawns neatly mowed, everything looked like it was in its place. I didn't see any giant hangars where spacecraft may have been hidden, but then again, they could have been keeping those underground like in the movie Independence Day. The first thing Special Agent Johnson did, after introducing me to Special Agent Smith, a lady officer with pretty pearl earrings who had apparently replaced his former partner, Special Agent Davies, out on disability. Oops, my bad. It wasn't was shown me and my dad the room in which I'd be staying. A very nice room, actually like a hotel room with the TV and a phone and stuff. No soda fountain, I was relieved to see. Then he and Special Agent Smith took us to a different building where we met some Army guys. This one colonel who squeezed my hand too hard, this pimply-faced lieutenant who kept looking at my jeans like they were thigh-high boots or something. Then the colonel introduced us to a bunch of doctors in different buildings who acted really excited to see me and assured my dad that I was in the best of hands. My dad, even though I knew he was itching to get back to his restaurants, wouldn't leave in spite of the doctor's assurances. He kept saying stuff like, was Special Agent Smith going to be on call in case I needed something in the middle of the night? Who was going to make sure I got enough to eat? It was kind of embarrassing. Finally, one of the doctors, whose name tag said Helen Shifton, told my dad that they were ready for me and that I'd call him as soon as I was back in my room. After that, it was sort of obvious that they wanted him gone, so my dad left, saying that he'd be back to pick me up the next week. By then, we hoped that all the hoopla with the reporters and everything would have died down, and I can come back home. He hugged me right in front of everyone and kissed the top of my head. I pretended not to like it, but after he left, I couldn't help feeling a little bit, scared. I didn't tell that to Dr. Helen Shifton, though. When she asked how I was feeling, I said I was fine. I guess she didn't believe me, though, since she and the nurse gave me this complete physical, and I mean complete, with blood drawn and stuff poked in me, the whole thing. They checked my blood pressure, my cholesterol, my heart, throat, ears, eyes, the bottoms of my feet. They wanted to do a gynecological exam, so I let them, and while they were down there, I asked them about birth control and stuff. Because I might need some someday when I'm like 40. Dr. Shifton was totally cool about it, unlike my family doctor would have been, and answered all of my questions and told me everything looked normal. She even examined my scar, the one the lightning had left, and said it looked as if it was fading, and that someday it would probably go away altogether. When the scar goes, do the superpowers go too? I asked her, a little hopefully. Having superpowers was turning out to be more of a responsibility than I liked. She said she didn't know. After that, Dr. Shifton made me lie down in the big tube and keep really still while she took photographs of my brain. She told me not to think about anything, but I thought about Rob. I guess the pictures turned out okay anyway, since after that, Dr. Shifton made me get dressed, and then she left, and this little bald man came in and asked me a lot of really boring questions, like about my dreams and about my sex life and stuff. Although my sex life had, in recent days, showed signs of improving, albeit all too briefly, I didn't really have anything to tell him, and my dreams were all pretty boring too, mostly about forgetting how to play the flute right before my challenge with Karen Sue Hinckley. It wasn't until the little bald man started asking me a bunch of stuff about Douglas that I got annoyed. I mean, how did the U.S. government know about Douglas's suicide attempt? But they did, and when they asked me about it, I got defensive, and little bald man wanted to know why. So I said, wouldn't you be defensive if someone you didn't know started asking you stuff about your schizophrenic brother? But he said, no, he wouldn't, not unless he had something to hide. So then I said, the only thing I have to hide was the fact that I wanted to give him a big old knuckle sandwich, and he asked if I always felt so much aggression when discussing my family. That's when I got up and left his office and told Dr. Shifton that I wanted to go home now. You could tell Dr. Shifton was totally mad at the little bald man, but she couldn't show it since she's a professional and all. She said to him that she thought we talked long enough, and he slunk away, giving me all these dirty looks like I had ruined his day or something. Then Dr. Shifton told me not to worry about him, and that he was just Freudian, and nobody thought much of him anyways. After that, it was time for lunch. Special Agent Smith took me to the cafeteria, which was yet in another building. The food wasn't bad, better than school. I had fried chicken and potatoes. I noticed a little bald man eating there too. He looked at what I was eating and wrote it down in a little book. I pointed this out to Special Agent Smith, and she told me to ignore him. He probably had a complex. Since there was no one my age to sit with, I sat with Special Agent Smith and asked her how she came to be an FBI agent. She was pretty cool, answering my questions. She said she was a distinguished expert in marksmanship, which I guess meant she was a good shot, but she never killed anyone. She pulled her gun on people plenty of times, though. She even took it out of her holster and showed it to me. It was really cool, really heavy. I wanted one. But I'll wait until I'm 18. Another thing I have to wait for until I'm 18. After lunch, Dr. Schiffman sent me into this other doctor's office, and we spent a boring half hour with him holding up playing cards with the backs facing me and asking me what suit they were. And I was like, I don't know. You're holding them away from me. And he told me to guess. I guessed right only about 10% of the time. He said that was normal. I could tell he was disappointed, though. Then this weird skinny lady tried to get me to move stuff with my mind. I felt so sorry for her. I really tried, but of course I failed miserably at that too. She took me into a room that was like our language lab at school. I got to wear headphones, and I was kind of excited, thinking there'd be a movie. But the doctor in charge, very nervously looking man, said there'd be no movie, just some photos. I was supposed to look at the photos, and that was all. Am I supposed to remember what these people look like? I asked after the doctor got the ball rolling, and the photos started flashing up onto the screen in front of me. Like, is there going to be a quiz? He went, no quiz. Then I don't see a point. I was already bored with looking at pictures. The pictures were totally uninteresting. Just men, mostly white, some faintly Arab looking, a few black, a few Asian, some Hispanic, no names underneath, nothing. It was almost as boring as detention. Though through the headphones came some piped in Mozart. Not very well played, I might add. At least the flutist sucked. No life, you know. After a while, I took the headphones off and was like, can I take a break? Then the doctor got way nervous and asked if I had to go to the bathroom or something. And I wanted to be like, no, this just blows. But I didn't want to insult this experiment. So I said, I guess not. And I went back to looking at the photos. Middle-aged white guy, middle-aged white guy, middle-aged Asian guy, kind of hot-looking Arab guy, that dude from The Mummy, only no facial tattoos. Middle-aged white guy, middle-aged white guy. I wonder what they're serving for dinner. Old white guy, serial killer-looking kind of guy. Middle-aged white guy, middle-aged white guy, middle-aged white guy. Finally, after what seemed like a year, Dr. Shifton came out and told me I'd done great and that I could take the rest of the day off. Actually, after that, there wasn't a whole lot of the day left. It was around 3 o'clock. Back home, I'd just be going to detention. I felt a wave of homesickness. Can you believe that? I actually missed detention. Mrs. Clemmings, the W's, and Rob, of course. But when Special Agent Smith took me back out of my room and asked if I had a swimsuit, I forgot about Rob because it turned out there was a pool in the base. Since I hadn't brought a swimsuit, Special Agent Smith took me to a nearby mall. I picked out a kick-ass suit and a Sony PlayStation on the government's tab and went back to the base and went swimming. It was plenty hot out and the sun was still coming down hard, even though it was late in the day. I lounged around on a pool deck chair and watched other people at the pool. It was mostly women with young children. The wives, I guess, of the men who worked on the base. Some of the older kids were playing Marco Polo. I leaned back on my chair deck and closed my eyes, feeling the sun burning my skin. It was a nice feeling. I started to relax. Maybe, I told myself, everything would be all right after all. The smell of chlorine was tangy and pleasant in my nose. It smelled clean and sharp. Things usually work out for the best. The sound of children shouting filled my ears. Marco, then a splash, Polo, then another splash, Marco, splash, Polo, splash, laughter, Marco, splash, Polo, splash, screaming, hysterical laughter. I guess I must have fallen asleep because I had a weird dream. In it, I was standing in an enormous body of water. All around me were kids. Hundreds and thousands of kids. Big kids, little kids, fat kids, skinny kids, white kids, black kids. Kids of every describable kind. And they were all screaming Marco or Polo at me. Polo, splash, scream. Polo, splash, scream. And I was swimming around, trying to catch them. Only in my dream, it wasn't just a game. I wasn't Marco. In my dream, if I didn't catch these kids, they would be swept away by these rapids and tossed over the side like this 200-foot waterfall and fall screaming to their deaths. Seriously. So I was swimming and swimming, snatching up kid after kid and moving them safely, only to have them get caught in the current and get sucked away from me again. It was horrible. Kids were slipping past my fingertips, plunging to their deaths, and they weren't shouting Polo anymore either. They were screaming my name. They were screaming my name as they died. Jess? Jess. Jess, wake up. I opened my eyes. Special Agent Smith was looking down at me. I was lying in a deck chair by the pool, but something was wrong. I was the only one there. All the mothers and their kids had gone home, and the sun was almost down. Just the last few rays lit up the pool deck, and it had gotten quite a few degrees cooler outside. You fell asleep, Special Agent Smith said. It looked like you were having a pretty bad dream. Are you okay? I said, yeah. I sat up. Special Agent Smith handed me my t-shirt. Ooh, she said, wincing. You're all burnt. We should have gotten you some sunscreen. I looked down at myself. I was the color of a mulberry. I'll turn tan by tomorrow, I said. That must have been some dream. Do you want to tell me about it? Not particularly. After that, I went to my room and practiced my flute. I did the usual warm-up, then I practiced the piece Karen Sue Hinckley had declared she was going to challenge me on. It was so damn easy. I started doing some improv, adding some little trills here and there to jazz it up a little. When I got through, you could hardly recognize it was the same song. It sounded so much better. Poor Karen Sue. She's going to be stuck in fourth chair forever. Then I did a little Billy Joel Big Shot in honor of Douglas. He won't admit it, but it's still his favorite. I was cleaning my flute when somebody tapped at the door. Come in, I said, hoping it was room service. I was starved. It wasn't room service, though. It was that colonel guy I'd met at the beginning of the day. Special Agent Smith and Johnson were with him, along with the nervous little doctor who had made me look at all those pictures of middle-aged guys. He looked, for some reason, more nervous than ever. Hi, I said when they all come in and they were standing around, staring down at my flute like it was an AK-47 I was assembling or something. Is it time for dinner? Sure, Special Agent Johnson said. Just let us know what you want. I thought about it. Why not? I thought I'd ask for the best. Surf and turf would be good, I said. Done, the colonel said, and then he nodded at Special Agent Smith. She took out her cell phone and punched some numbers, then spoke softly into it. God, I thought, how sexist. Here Special Agent Smith is, an FBI agent who put herself through school and is a distinguished expert, markswoman and all, and she still has to take food orders? Remind me not to be an FBI agent when I grow up. Now, the colonel said, I was told that you had a little nap today. I was bending over, putting the different pieces of my flute in their individual sections in the velvet-lined case, but something in the colonel's voice made me look up at him. He, Like all the guys in the photo, was middle-aged, and he was white. He had what they called in the books we were forced to read in English class, ruddy features, meaning he looked as if he had spent a lot of times outdoors. Not tan like me, but sun-damaged and wrinkly. He had bright blue eyes, however. He squinted down at me and went, "You wouldn't, during your little nap, happen to have dreamed about any of those men whose photos you saw today in Dr. Leonard's office, now did you, Miss Monstrati?" I blinked. What was going on here? I looked at Special Agent Smith. She had hung up her cell phone and now looked at me expectantly. "You remember, Jess," she said. "You told me you had a bad dream." "Yeah," I said slowly. I think I was starting to catch on. So I mentioned it to Colonel Jenkins," Special Agent Smith said, "and he was just wondering if you happened to dream about any of the men whose photos you saw this afternoon." I said, "No." Dr. Leonard nodded and said to the Colonel, "It's just as we suspected. REM stage sleep is necessary for the phenomenon to occur, Colonel. Nappers rarely achieve the level of deep sleep necessary for REM. Colonel Jenkins frowned down at me. "So you think tomorrow morning then, Leonard?" He rumbled. He looked very forbidding in his uniform, with all his medals and pins. He must, I thought, have fought in some pretty important battles. "Oh, definitely, sir," Leonard said. Then he looked down at me and went in his little nervous little voice, "You tend to have these dreams about the missing children after a complete night of rest. Am I correct, Miss Monstrati?" And I went, yes. Dr. Leonard nodded. "Then we should check back with her tomorrow morning, sir." Colonel Jenkins said, "I don't like it," so loudly that I jumped. "Smith." "Sir?" Special Agent Smith snapped to attention. "Bring the photos," he said. "Bring them for her to look at tonight before she goes to sleep, so it'll be fresh in her memory." "Yes, sir," Special Agent Smith said. Then she got back on the cell phone and started murmuring things into it again. Colonel Jenkins looked down at me. "We have high hopes for you, young lady," he told me. I went, "You do?" "We do indeed. There are hundreds of men, traitors to this great nation, who have been running from the law for far too long. But now that we have you, they don't stand a chance, do they?" I didn't know what to say. "Do they?" he barked. I jumped and said, "No, sir." Colonel Jenkins seemed to like the sound of that. He left, along with Dr. Leonard and Special Agent Smith and Johnson. A little while later, the guy in the chef's uniform delivered shrimp scampi and a perfectly grilled steak to my door. I wasn't fooled. There would not have been a soda fountain in my room, but I knew what was going on. The book of photos arrived shortly after the food did. I flipped through it while I ate, just for the hell of it. Traitors? Colonel Jenkins had said. Were these men spies? Murderers? What? Some of them looked pretty scary. Others didn't. What if they weren't murderers or spies? What if they were just people who, like Sean, had gotten into trouble through no fault of their own? Was it really my responsibility to find them? I didn't know. I thought I'd better talk to somebody who might, so I called my house. My mom answered. She told me Dougie had been released from the hospital and that he was doing so much better now and that he was back in his own room and all the excitement had died down. All the excitement, I knew, had moved to the gates outside of Crane, where all the news fans and stuff had gone as soon as they learned I'd be brought here. Even so, my mom kept complaining about how the whole thing had been triggered by Dad making Dougie work in the restaurant, until finally I couldn't stand it anymore and said, "That's bullshit, Mom. It was because of me and all the reporters." And then she got mad at me for swearing, so I hung up without having talked to my dad, which was who I called to talk to in the first place. To cheer myself up, I started flipping around the channels on my big TV. I watched The Simpsons and then a movie about some boys who did a beauty makeover on this girl who looked just fine before they got their mitts on her. This movie was so boring. Although Ruth would have liked it because of the beauty makeover thing. Then I started flipping through the channels again. And then I froze when I got to CNN. Because they were showing pictures of me. It was my dorky school picture. It was a picture that one of the reporters must have taken when I wasn't looking. In the picture, I was laughing. I wondered what I'd been laughing at. I couldn't remember laughing too much these past few days. When Then my picture was replaced by another one I recognized. Sean. A picture of Sean Patrick O'Hanahan, looking much as I'd last seen him. Baseball cap, turned round backwards, his freckles standing out starkly from his face. I turned up the volume. Irony is that the boy appears to be missing again, the reporter said. Authorities say Sean disappeared from his father's Chicago home yesterday before dawn, and he hasn't been seen or heard from since. It is believed that the boy left of his own volition, and that he is heading back to Paulet, Indiana, where his mother is being held without bail on charges of kidnapping and endangering the welfare of a minor. Oh my God! They arrested Sean's mom? They arrested Sean's mom because of me, because of what I'd done. And now the kid was on the lam. And it was all my fault. I had been lounging around the pool while Sean was God knows where, going through God knows what, trying to get back to his incarcerated mother. And just what, I wondered, did he think he was going to do when he got back to Paulet? Just bust her out of jail? The kid was alone and hopeless because of me. Well, all that was going to change, I decided, switching off the TV. He may have been alone for now, but come tomorrow, he wouldn't be. Want to know why? Because I was going to find him again. I had done it once. I could do it again. And this time, I was going to do it right.